Man, that is exactly what we talked about when we said how powerful that session with Yogi Roth was. As a matter of fact, our yoga master, by the way, thank you again, Christy, talked about how she had chills listening to him talk and tell his story.
Yeah, and don't forget about the camera guy. Trying to hold those tears behind those cameras. Good thing I wasn't on screen.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I've known Yogi for years, and the one thing that he's always really good at is we'll sit down and we'll talk, and it's just kind of quieting my mind and trying to find ways that I can be my best self.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, when we talk a lot about real estate, I think a lot of buyers out there with the market, and we've talked about the chaos of the market and how hard it is for buyers right now. And buyers keep hearing things like, you know, your highest and best, and being your give us your best, highest and best offer. And they're doing that. And they're doing all the other things that we've talked about in previous episodes in terms of getting pre-approved. And they feel like they got all their ducks in a row, and yet they're still not having their offers accepted. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick was, what are some ways that buyers right now can get creative and things that a lot of people aren't doing so that they can stand out in some of these multi-offer homes that we're seeing everywhere in the market?
Oh yeah, well, creativity is a huge word, right? And so one of the things we're actually really strategizing about is actually getting the appraisal. So you can do an appraisal waiver, right? So what that means...
So wait a minute, so you're saying to waive the appraisal?
Waiving the...
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
So it's a gray area, right? It's because when you waive the appraisal, if it comes in lower, then you have to come up with a difference. But
okay, so wait, hold on. So you've got the loan, you've got a loan contingency, you've got inspection contingency, you've got an appraisal contingency. You're saying to waive it, even though, and I have the asking, I've got my price that we've agreed to, but if the appraisal comes in low, don't I have to make up that gap?
In theory, yes, but the key is to expedite your appraisal. You can actually pay extra couple $100 and rush the appraisal, so that way it falls in within that contingency period. So you're still protected.
So the seller thinks I'm waiving the appraisal, but in reality, I'm actually still getting the information.
You're getting the
during
information,
one of my other
and you're protecting yourself.
I love it. What else? What are some other things?
Yeah, and so the other option would be doing an escalation clause. Now this is kind of old school mentality, but where you say, here's my cap, this is what I'm comfortable paying, and then you put an extra $1,000 or $5,000 above the top offer, and that way it kind of keeps you escalated above all other competitors.
Okay, so there's multiple offers out there. I say, here's how much I want to pay, but my escalation clause says I'll pay if I'm not the highest offer, I'll pay an extra $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 above whatever that highest offer is. And not all agents love using escalation clauses.
They don't. Not in this market either, right? And you know, a year ago, sure, but because you know they want the highest and best, they want to just know, right? And so the key is to also put a cap on that if you do decide to do that, but also highest and best. You know, and the third thing actually will be, this is new. Right, and so we actually just recently wrote something up on this where you put your earnest money deposit, but in the contract you say, okay, I'm going to put X amount. Let's say hypothetically, your earnest deposit is about $20,000.
Gotcha.
But then you can say $5,000, for example, is immediately released to the seller
upon acceptance.
Acceptance of the offer. Exactly, and so basically the seller walks away. Whether you decide to walk away due to some kind of contingency, they're still guaranteed that $5,000. So you're out the $5,000. But you're still protected because of those contingencies to walk away.
Well, and from the seller's perspective, again, whether you're waiving your appraisal contingency or you have the escalation clause, so they feel like, oh, well, this guy will be willing or will be willing to pay a higher price than even my best offer, or the release of funds. You know, a lot of the sellers, their concern is they don't want to start a deal and then have somebody walk away, be empty-handed, and have to start the process over. So with that last immediate release of funds,
it's in good faith.
It's a way to say, look, if for some reason I walk away, for whatever reason, you've at least got some cash in hand for your time to go back on the market, which obviously a lot of sellers would appreciate.
That's exactly right. And again, it's not common, right?
Yeah.
So the trick is to coach your real estate agent to do it.
Well, it is creative. There's nobody more creative than we want to talk to our next guest, Leann Harris, who is the CEO of Keller Williams Portland Central. She has some creative ways, not just to run a business with 300 plus employees, but also multiple streams of income. Welcome back to First Team Live with our guest Leann Harris, who is, CEO of Keller Williams Portland Central.
Yeah.
Let's see. You also are an Airbnb and You instructor.
Yes.
Let's see. You also have your own podcast, Getting to Know Your Realtor.
Yeah.
You're into cryptocurrency. Let's see. You also started and you're gonna have to tell me about the founder of
Nonprofit.
Yeah, of a nonprofit. Let's see. Like, what else? She's also figured out how to put 38 hours into one day.
I have.
So I'm trying to figure
I have.
How do you manage all these different hats?
I mean, first of all, it's always people, right? You can't do anything by yourself. You have to always have a team. You always have to have a bunch of people. And I had heard years ago that someone said, you know, the President of the United States or whoever your person is, right, that they have just as much time in the day as you do. So what are you doing with your time? And I was like, that's a really good one. And what I realized was they had leverage and they had great people. So it's always the team.
No, I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
so the team. Well, one thing that you know, as I was kind of looking through your background and things, and we have our vodcast, our video podcast was yours, and I'm curious, you know, getting to know your realtor, but you go way past just meeting with realtors and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
who have been some of your more interesting guests on your podcast?
Yeah, so first of all, I think what's important for people to know is that the podcast actually originated because during the pandemic, a lot of realtors were running around scared. They were like, what am I going to do? And I said, well, why don't we create a little, basically a commercial for them to put out to their entire sphere and for the sphere to get to know them. And it started off by me doing little clips with top agents and getting to know them, but what I realized was that we had people that were so instrumental in caring about the community and growing the community and doing so much more than just quote unquote selling a house. They were actually changing people's lives. And so that really took off from there. But last year, or let's see, so season 1, I think I had Adam Robinson, who is, I call him the Oracle. He's just one of the smartest men I've ever met. He's worked on Wall Street. He's worked with Bobby Fischer as he's a chess champion. And the reason why I wanted to sit down and talk to him is that he talks about real estate markets, and he talks about when you should be cautious, when should you actually stop and think. And so he's been interviewed by, you know, Tim Ferriss and people like that. But
So what was his nugget? What was the best piece of advice he gave?
you know, oh man, this guy, he is so smart. I don't know that there's one nugget, but I would say that the one thing that he said was, when everything feels chaotic like this, slow down and take a look and get methodical about things. And that's definitely what I started doing after I met with him during the pandemic. It's like, it doesn't have to be chaos. Even though the real estate market might have 0.08 months of inventory, it still doesn't have to be chaos. There is a rhythm in everything that is out there, and you have to look for what those patterns are.
Gotcha. Well, look, as an Airbnb and You instructor, and as a matter of fact, one thing that I've been working with Fairway's first team is looking to buy an Airbnb. So help me out. Like, what are some of the things that as an owner, but also even people that are like, look, I'm not looking to buy one of those, but even as a renter, like, what should I be on the lookout for?
Well, okay, so years ago, I read a book called The Inevitable, and this guy is what they call the Oracle out of Silicon Valley. A lot of oracles out there, right? But I like to listen to these guys. So he was out of the Silicon Valley, and he said that the one thing that was going to happen was that short-term rentals were absolutely going to take off, and that the reason why is because our millennials and our Gen Zers really don't mind temporary housing. They like to go to places, and as you and I were talking about before we started the filming was, you know, we both want to get down to the desert. We love Palm Springs, right? And so when you look at your houses, you could have 4 or 5 houses and be able to rent those out, right? And now you go to the place where you want to be in whatever season you want to be there. So I don't know, I bought a couple places, I started Airbnb-ing them, but what I figured out was that I could write a course and people were actually going to follow it. And I teach everywhere in the United States. I have 15 classes booked up right now, and people just want to know, how do I take it from acquisition to inception?
Right.
And actually, not only am I making money on my on this house and this investment that I've made, but now I have a small business on the side, and I'm netting $30,000 per unit. And now all of a sudden you pull in 4 or 5 of those, and you have, maybe a single mom that owned her house and she was able to use that equity to buy the first one. And now she's got these small businesses on the side that can actually be managed by other people because, like I said, teams matter and the people around you matter.
Constantly on the hustle.
Yeah, totally.
I appreciate that. Well, part of, you're always on the grind, and you're the CEO of Keller Williams. You've got the pod. You've got these businesses, but you did find time to make sure that you do something that gives back.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your nonprofit.
Well, I mean, obviously a lot of us here in the Portland area know the amount of mental health stuff that we have. And I actually lost my brother to suicide years ago, and that was always this taboo word that we weren't allowed to talk about. As soon as you talk about it, everybody gets weird, nobody wants to talk about it. So I really didn't know what to do with my energy around it anyway. But then in 2006, when I saw the market crash, I saw a lot of builders, a lot of real estate agents that were deeply impacted by their mental health. And so if I cared about the real estate industry, I had to also care about mental health when our markets were going up and down. And what I realized was there was a lot of people out there that actually needed help. So 3 years ago, I founded, or 2016, I started a 501c3, and it's really word of mouth, but we've really been able to impact some people and get them the support and help that they need. And sometimes it is the families, the survivors, and we make sure that they're doing okay too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I talked about your Twitter page and some of the things that I've seen on there. And one thing that was interesting, because I constantly talk about whether when I'm done television or radio, how much diversity is important to me, and not just racial diversity, but gender diversity as well. And there was something that really stuck with me when you talked about making sure that there's diversity, in particular of gender, in your boardroom, and how that actually relates to how successful your business will be. I don't want to take your thunder away, because it was awesome. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I think sometimes people look at diversity as this, pie in the sky, like kumbaya thing, and not understanding that actually helps your bottom line.
Yeah, so I'll go to the other side of it. I'll talk about candidates that are eligible to be in a boardroom, that first of all, they need to shine. It's funny because I'm wearing my Average Sucks shirt today, and it's because I just interviewed Michael Burnoff, who wrote this book, and he talks about how people play very small in their life, and that your personal average actually can carry forward in your life. So I don't think that you should hire token people. You should not hire a token woman to be part of your board because you need a woman in that seat. I think that people need to step up and actually let themselves shine so that they get into those positions, because we do need those voices. And the world, what I find is, tends to tamper down people's voices to keep them safe. And nobody needs to play safe anymore. Turns out that we've got chaos going on in the city. Don't play safe anymore. Everybody needs to get out of their box. They need to think about how you can impact the world and how you can move into those boardrooms so that you can get your voice heard.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what, we got to do this again, because I got fired up talking about all these different subjects. Maybe I'll catch you down in the desert.
Yes,
one of
we
these
can
times.
do it. Poolside video, I like it.
So the next First Team Live with Leann will be poolside, margaritas in hand, all those things. I'm gonna have to do some sit-ups though before we do
Okay,
that.
me
'Cause
too.
I'm not in pool version right now, but we appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Well, once again, another awesome sit-down interview with one of the experts in real estate, in Leann Harris. Really appreciate her time. Apparently, I've got a summer reading list with all the books that you recommended. I'm gonna have to get my read game up. So.
No, that sounds great. And Yogi Roth, I mean, what an incredible sit